Would you tell me a story, please?
All right. Once upon a time, there
One,
was
two.
a little boy named... Well, actually, this little boy's name is Tim.
I like the name Tim.
One day, Tim went out to the backyard and
One, two.
put leaves and taped branches to his arms and started climbing the big oak tree. His little brother said, Tim, you can't fly.
What up, man?
He said, yeah, you just watch.
Our first guest. We just getting started, man.
And jumped.
How you doing, Eric? Looking forward to this one. Waves back. I was working on this one today. Let's see how much of this we can get off. What's going on, man? Welcome. We just getting situated. Yep. We just vibing right now. This is the intro music. For those who haven't joined me in previous incarnations of this show. All right. Cool. So, we're gonna get things started here. Kind of break down how this all works. Okay. Good volume. Cool. All right. So we just kind of kicking it right now. This is a pretty intimate one. So we'll let people kind of fill in. But so welcome to Ill Communication. I think this is episode 6. Been doing this weekly every Wednesday since quarantine started, basically, maybe a couple weeks after. So, been having fun with this. For those of you, I think singularly right now, for those of you who haven't seen this before, the basic premise here is kind of a multifaceted little show. We kind of break down, live beats, unreleased music, definitely a lot of music talk, a lot of life talk, and a lot of independent artist kind of entrepreneurship talk. So that's, whether it's production, freelancing, just moving as an independent artist or independent musician, tackle a range of subjects here. So, start things off. And this is just kind of a singular conversation. But before I start getting into the specifics of today's topic, which is going to be kind of how to articulate your story effectively. So whether you're an independent artist, whether you're freelancing as a producer or an engineer, just really whatever it might be, whether you just own a business, period, and you're kind of looking for a way to present yourself accordingly and get people involved in your story, in your narrative as it is. That's kind of what today's topic is about, and I'm gonna see if I can fit everything into this one. We might split this up into a multi-episode affair. But before we get into all that, I usually start off with just some life stuff. So first thing first, I'm closing in on my semester. It's my final semester at City College. So that is 3 long years at City College, and getting ready to transfer over to UCSD in the fall. So I got about 2 more weeks left here at City College, and I'm on my way out. So trying to make it strong, trying to get up out of here and prep for the next school year. So beyond that, trying to navigate this quarantine. I don't know, it's been feeling kind of strange lately. I don't know, it's been feeling kind of strange. From my perspective, we're still rocking masks and we're still kind of proceeding as if the numbers would dictate and as science would dictate. But it has been wild seeing folks kind of transitioning into attempted normalcy, bars and restaurants. So I don't know how I feel about that right now. I'm not quite ready for that. But I don't know. I'm kind of curious to get other people's perspectives and thoughts on that. Yeah, I'm just kind of feeling uneasy, even as a small business owner and someone who helps run a record shop, which is a brick and mortar public facing business. Yeah, just feeling a little iffy, man, and not feeling like I've seen the science and the numbers to really back up such a broad return to the normalcy at beaches and public spots, restaurants with no masks and such. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that as still somebody who, though begrudgingly, wears a mask even when I got to go run in the morning. Got the mask wrapped up. So, yeah, But all that said, wanted to start getting into the topic for today. So, and I titled this "The Art of Storytelling," Part 1, named after one of my favorite Outkast records. But, turn the music up just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So, now last week we talked about, how you can kind of like leverage your fan base or your skill set that you've developed as an artist into other fields. And, it's great for finding working and creating incomes in those fields. So, for instance, I'd use an example of getting a job at JCPenney back when I lived in Columbus, Ohio, and a lot of the, when I gave him my interview, a lot of the examples of overcoming obstacles or leadership or whatever qualities they were looking for, I found came from the music and artist side of my life, not the day job, corporate, or 9-to-5 side of my life. And it was just one of those moments where I realized, a lot of these skills that we have out here in these music streets are transferable if they need to be, and a lot of times we sleep on that. So that's kind of what we were talking about last week. But I wanted to then talk about kind of how you can leverage the experience and growth you develop in those fields and bring it back to your original artist or your original brand, as it were. So in that, you have to be able to create a story, and it's easier said than done. We all have stories, but when you look at a lot of independent artists coming out, they're not necessarily great at telling their stories. What's up, Lance? They might tell the bullet points of the stories, where I'm from, where I was born, a somewhat generic version of things that have happened. But a lot of artists' stories, whether it's in their bio, their press release, whatever it might be, it kind of lacks that narrative that really grips you to them, and so kind of wanted to talk about the characteristics and the skill sets that come with creating a good story for yourself. And if you're an independent artist or freelancer running your own business, it's kind of something you need to be able to do. I personally think being able to narrate your own story effectively to other people is actually one of the top qualities of an artist, period, or is anybody pushing their, and I hate to use the word brand, but anyone pushing their brand. You really need to be able to do this. And it involves, I tried to jot down a few qualities here and dive into them to kind of help you maybe formate how you might go about doing this. So, first point, what do I want to call this? The first step, the first characteristic, the first trait that comes with being able to tell your story effectively is self-awareness. And so I jotted this down earlier. I'm going to kind of go from reading to talking and expanding on this. But self-awareness. So the greater you know yourself, the better you know how to fit into the grand scheme of your community and the world. You may start out with an idea of who you think you are, but as you grow the ability to see yourself from others' eyes, you can begin to develop an honest interpretation of who you really are to these other people. And again, I think that's the greatest asset that allows you to tell a story. A lot of times, to use myself as an example here, I saw myself as an MC and maybe an MC producer all through my 20s. And for the most part, that's what I was. But it really took me to start seeing an alternate version of myself. That, as I talked about last week, I had this side business doing graphic design that didn't necessarily fit into the aesthetic of who I was as an MC or as a producer, but I had to begin to see myself a little bit differently and kind of reposition myself in my mind maybe as more of an entrepreneur who MCs, who produces and is passionate about it, but who can also start a business and do graphic design. And being able to define myself within myself is that I slowly put that out to the public, and I naturally started being kind of defined as that. And it was a huge lesson for me. And that can be, whether you're trying to define yourself just on social media, through email, newsletters, or blasts, or just in daily conversation, the way that you present yourself in a room of people, when they say, well, what do you do? When you start feeling comfortable saying, instead of just like, yeah, I produce, it's, I'm an entrepreneur, or, I run a company, or I do this. You're defining who you are as you see yourself inside in a public sphere. And that's how people, see you and perceive you, and they move as such. And it's really, it doesn't sound like much, but it's actually really monumental. It's kind of a magical thing to be able to transform who you are in front of people in real time. It's evolution, and it's really cool. But it takes a huge amount of self-awareness in that, and in self-awareness comes humbleness, an ability to balance your ego with your logic and rationale, your ability to rationalize, to practically see who you are in the scheme of your community, to see what services people are leaning on you for, to see what type of, just generally, like, what do people come to you for? Don't deny something that might be right in front of your face just because you choose to see yourself another way, so self-awareness. And that's kind of a, that gets into some spiritual talk, that gets into some, some Zen, really, understanding who you are. That's working on you and yourself in your life. That's not really something you can shortcut or life hack. It's just what you spend your life doing. But I think, if we're here for our lives, we might as well spend it doing something. And if we're going to figure out who we are genuinely as people, we might as well figure out how to parlay that into our careers or what we really love doing, So self-awareness, that is the first step. After self-awareness, a strong support system. So the key to self-awareness is getting honest feedback from friends, family, your team, and that is your support system. So they're the ones that, if you're open to the critiques, the feedback, the molding, the making you a better version of you, allowing other eyes to complete you so that you can see a more complete version of yourself. That's huge. And again, it's kind of a sign of maturity that you're able to accept that feedback and build off of that from people that you trust. So yeah, it starts with your family, hopefully, if they're constructive. If not, it starts with whatever family you've hopefully found for yourself, your friends, your team. So, the example I used for myself when I was writing the press release for that public launch of Sound Reason, I went over the entire process with my team. I got as many trusted, like outside perspectives as possible to just really help me shape not just the company, but who I was becoming, running that company, versus who I formerly was as maybe just an artist, just an MC, just a producer. And it took having a strong team behind me to really, really poke through the holes, to make me run it back, rewrite the bio, rewrite the press release, rebuild my portfolio, rebuild the website. You can do this better. You can do that better. This better illustrates who you are. You might not see it. Lean into this. So, it was a lot. That strong support system. So third, and this is a big one, we're going to kind of split this one a few different ways. Communication. Communication comes in different forms. All right, I've split this into verbal, written, images, and video, and then most importantly, your art. So we're talking about telling a story, and more specifically, telling your story. And the only way to tell it is to communicate. I could do a whole multi-art series of these episodes on the art of communication, and I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm always, it's something I do pride myself on, is communicating and articulating an idea or a thought to which hopefully it is very well understood on the other side, by whatever ear is receiving it. And your story is something you want very well understood by a broad spectrum of ears. You don't just want your story understood by your boy down the street. Of course he knows your story. You don't want it just understood by your mom. Of course she knows your story. You want to be able to articulate your story in such a way that it resonates well beyond just you and your immediate circle. And it takes time, it takes practice, it takes focus to be able to do that. But I did want to try and give a little bit of specifics as to what they entail. So let's start with written. The way you can better articulate your story in a written form. So I say this: can you communicate who you are to someone who's never met you? Can you lean on certain aspects of your story depending on who you're writing it to? So for instance, my bio in the mid-2000s, as I said before, looked very different than my bio today. I actually have a Google Doc with various versions of my bio. Some bios lean, especially since I'm back in school, some bios lean more toward higher education. So if I'm filling out like a scholarship application or an application for a new school, my bio looks a bit different. The contents are all the same. I'm not lying. I'm not changing the contents that are there. But what I choose to highlight, how I choose to highlight it, it might change a little bit versus writing a story, writing a bio for, a music festival or promoter. Promoter might be I know what the promoter is looking for. They're interested in, where I've toured. What up, Ride Out? What up, Zim? So they're interested in where I've toured. They're interested in what my numbers look like, my streams, what I'm pulling in that city, what venues I've played before. I'm going to hone in on those parts of my bio more than I might sending that bio to UCSD. They might not care so much what the head count was at a club back in Cincinnati that I played last year. So you take these things and you keep accruing all these things. The more that you do, the more art you put out, just the more life experience you get, the more hurdles you overcome. You might decide to share certain hurdles with someone in higher education, or a client, a potential base of clients, versus what you choose to share with your fan base. It's all different. So again, being able to write your story but also lean it toward who your audience is going to be, that is something to think about. So that is written form of communicating your story. So and I want to say this too: being able to either flesh it out as if you're like giving an interview to a publication or a website, versus distilling it down to like one paragraph. Like, get so comfortable with your story, with what it is you do, with the main points of your life, that if somebody asked you, just off the top of your head, you were in a, I don't know, I hate to say a networking event because those are lame. I don't really go to those, but so for me, when someone comes to the record shop and I get into a conversation with them, they're looking for music, I'm helping them, and we get on the subject of doing music, or it so happens that I mention, they're like, oh, well, what do you do? I have to be able to tell them what I do really short. They don't want to hear what genre I'm in. They don't want to hear all these things. They just want a very quick soundbite that they can digest. And so same with the written form. When you can write something down and make a complete stranger who's maybe looking at applications, looking at a million different artists trying to play this festival, looking at a million different students trying to get into this school, a client looking at a million different service providers who do graphic design or production or whatever, they're thumbing through what you do. And for you to be able to articulate your story in a paragraph and make them take a breath like, oh, wow, I'm intrigued, that's a thing. So that's written. Verbal. And some similar things here, but some differences. So the ability to give compelling, long-form, structured interest to your story via a podcast, as well as distill your entire story down to a 15-second elevator pitch. So, we just talked about the length a second ago. So same as written. The more you know yourself, again, self-awareness, the more you know what you bring to the table. So whether that's you're an artist, you're a student, potentially you're a service provider, whatever, the quicker you can tell somebody who's never met you exactly what it is you do. So this could mean, again, a client interested in your services, a prospective fan asking you what type of music you make. So again, the record store story, and like I was going to say with the record shop, so someone comes into the shop. and we're talking music, and they're like, oh, do you do music? And I'm like, yeah, I do music. And they're like, oh, well, what do you do? All right, now the artist in me, the artist in you tends to, especially when you're really into your craft and you're trying to push your boundaries, you're like, man, well, I'm influenced by these jazz musicians, but these MCs, but this soul musician over here. And you want to kind of almost list your influences. Like, well, see, I'm kind of like a mix of like, electro, new wave, bedroom pop, hip hop, but with like retro soul boogie. And they're like, yo, I don't know what anything you just said meant. I don't even know what that sound like. They just care about the broad, what is your genre? And I just got to say hip hop. So I had to kind of slide past my little artist ego, who's like, but I'm so much more. And I just yeah, I do hip hop. And I have to be able to tell them like, yeah, if you're a fan of like Common, Kendrick, Atmosphere, things of that nature, you might dig my stuff. It got a little bit of funk in there. So, and they're like, oh, cool, I can digest that. It's easy to get to, and I can say that in like one sentence. And it took me a while to get there. When I was younger, I definitely had more of a like, but you wouldn't even understand what I'm on. But I had to get over myself because it doesn't work. So being able to articulate your story, articulate what you're about quickly, it helps. So moving on to images and video, man. And I'm not necessarily the best at this. My guy Ride Out on here is actually an amazing photographer and could probably build on this much more than I could. But the ability to tell your story through visual media in this era, mandatory, So I look at it like the idea that somebody could visit your Instagram feed and just scroll through really quickly, in the midst of a day where they're not thinking about you or anything else, and that they could get an idea of kind of what you're about, whether, it's your career or your life. Maybe it's pictures of your dog all day, and they're like, yo, it's a dog lover. And maybe they mess with you like, yo, I love your dog. I love looking at dogs. I'm gonna follow you because I'm all about these dogs. But you essentially conveyed your story just by posting them dogs, So I like to think that being conscious of what you put up there for a random stranger to be able to see on the platforms that you do have control over, it's a big deal, and it's a big way to help reinforce your story. So if people are already kind of aware of you, being able to just like catch you on YouTube, catch you on Instagram, whatever platform, and see that it follows up all the stuff you've been talking that you do, it's helpful, and it connects people a little bit deeper to you. So images and video. And last one here is your art. This is the biggest one. So being able to convey your story through your art is what makes you an artist. Everything I mentioned before, it's all important. It's cool. It's cool to be able to tell a room of strangers your story. It's cool to be able to write your story down and make somebody on the other side of an email appreciate it. But the difference between people who can do that versus artists are that artists can do that within their art, within the actual product or content that they push in. That you can hear what a vocalist is saying or a producer is saying. You can see what a photographer snaps and get the essence of them in it. You get their story and what they're doing. And to me, that's what takes the 10,000 hours. That's what takes a life to really, really push through on. But the example I wanted to use, I have a couple. So my guy Chris Oric, formerly went by Red Pill when we did a record called Instinctive Drowning back in 2016, which is on all streaming platforms. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a heavy record. It's definitely something you want to listen to, preferably not like riding around on a sunny day, but it's a very, very impactful, deep, compelling record, and that's because of Chris. Chris is amazing at telling his story. But this album, which has a few different narratives running through it, but it's definitely a concept record, deals with, and I want to try and say this all respectfully, but it deals with addiction and the traumas that cause those addiction. And one of the traumas that Chris talks about in the title track is the death of his mom at a young age. But what I want to hone in on is this, and this is just how artfully, to me, you can really tell a story with so little. Thanks, man. So on the title track, Instinctive Drowning, and I go ask anyone to listen to this just to get what I'm trying to say here. It comes deeper in the record. It's on the second half of the album. He says this. He says, she died on, I believe I'm getting this right, but she died on April 23rd. Nobody put her in the news. Now, that sentence to me is already amazing. It's and this is one of Chris's gifts as an MC, is to be able to say so much with so little. And so to be able to say, a very straightforward line, she died on April 23rd, nobody put her in the news. That first line is just, today the sky is blue. Today is May 20th, nobody put her in the news. But it says so much more, right? Exactly. It's a loaded line. But even more than that, I mean, and I won't over explain how loaded the line is. We're all pretty much grown ups, but you can get a sense for like just how, like how important this is family, how important this person is, even if in the grand scheme of life, no one ever knew. This still rocked my soul. This rocked my life. But it puts it in instant perspective. This wasn't a celebrity death. This wasn't anything that the masses would care about, but I cared about this, and this shaped the rest of my life. But what I really want to hone in on with this is Chris is a very steady voice. He's a very steady MC. His voice doesn't shift. It's monotone in a great way. If you know his personality on record, it's a very monotone voice, but in a great way. But for the only moment on that album, his voice cracks. He says she died on April 23rd. Nobody put her in the news. And there's a moment where his voice cracks. I don't even know if it was intentional. But what I took away from it, and our engineer Charlie, I believe, really felt this too, is that for a record so full of pain, so full of open honesty, just raw honesty, I've never heard anything like it. He never broke that monotone cadence until that moment. It was like an ocean of emotion sitting under this iceberg, and the iceberg just cracked, and it's just one little crack, and you might walk over that crack and have no idea. Just like in the album, you might hear his voice crack right there and have no idea until you really hear the undercurrents of emotion that have been pushing through a whole life and through a whole record just for that vocal crack to hit. And that's what makes that vocal crack mean so much. That's what makes him a genius storyteller and a genius MC. I could never is perfect. I say all that to say, he told his story. He told his family story. He told it all. If no other line was on that album, if it was all instrumental, he told it all with those 2 bars. And that is beautiful. It's gut-wrenching. It's amazing. And yeah, so I think, I guess that the moral of the story there is, that's what storytelling is about. Like, again, storytelling through your art, how to distill it down to the most basic raw moment and say it in such a way that, when he says that, we all know what he means. Like, it's not just his dude down the block. No, like, oh well, you had to be there to really know what he's saying. Like, no, you can live in, halfway across the globe and feel it. And if you've ever been through something emotionally similar to that, losing somebody under the circumstances that he did, then you feel it. It just jars you. And I just thought it was beautiful. So he is my example of, how to really share your story within your art effectively, in a beautiful way. But I have one more example in how to make the story of your art really maybe turn eyes to your art. And this is kind of what I'll close with on the topic today. Like, we all are putting out records, right? Everyone has a song they're ready to put up on streaming services. And there's this whole like endorphin rush. You're like, oh, I got a record, I want to put it out, and then you put it out there and you feel great for a day, and then the record goes away, or the streams kind of go away. People on social media, whoever, friends, whatever, they're done. They're on to the next song, because that's how we move, and that's okay. But it can be kind of a letdown. You're like, oh man, I just spent months on this record, and then I spent a week getting ready to put it out, and then I put it out and I'm so excited, and now 20 streams later, it's just in the digital dustbin with everything else. Hopefully someone might stumble upon it, whatever. But it can be difficult, because it doesn't feel like it can often feel like they're not really connecting. Like, maybe people just listen in passing or say like, oh, that's dope, that's fire, or whatever. But you're really looking for people to want to connect to the project. And to me, one of the best ways to do that is to really, again, build the story of you as an artist, and also build the story of the project, and do that effectively. So, I think the example I want to use is when I released An Idiot's Guide to Anarchy back in late 2017. And that album took me 10 years to make, right? Not just to make it, but to really make it fully, like to write it, produce it, co-mix it, have it mastered, press the vinyl up, build the story around it, build the business around it, build the label platform that it would come out on. It took a while, but that 10 years, man, in the beginning, I was really iffy about leaning it. I don't know. I was very iffy. I felt very insecure that it took me 10 years. I felt very iffy. And actually my guy Rideout, shouts out, he took the picture that I would ultimately use for the cover of that album. So always got to shout the folks out who are here, who helped me put the art out. So all that to say, I was kind of iffy. I was really insecure that it took me 10 years to put this record out, you know. It just, I knew I'd been active. I knew I'd been putting records out, but it was just, if, you know, behind the scenes, there were moments where this record was just a huge weight on my shoulders. I felt swallowed up in it. I felt like I was overdoing it, overthinking it. It was overkill. It was just doing way too much. So the idea of 10 years held a lot of baggage, you know. But I ultimately, instead of downplaying it, and props to D'Angelo for releasing Black Messiah back in 2015. Granted, I'm no D'Angelo, but him being able to drop a classic banger, you know, of a record, right, you know, 15 years after dropping Voodoo, was kind of inspiring. It reminded me that it doesn't matter how long it takes to drop. If you're dropping quality records and you're staying active in any capacity, the people will wait, and it just will be what it is, you know. So I was like, well, maybe I should lean into it, and that's what I did. So the story that I built around Idiot's Guide to Anarchy was that it took me 10 years to make this record. As in, don't you want to hear the record that took 10 years to make? The stories, you know, like I threaded together 10 years worth of stories, of traumas, of perspectives that have shifted over that 10 years. I really wanted to make it something unique. Like, how do I really articulate the story of a 10-year album into a couple paragraphs? So how do I now distill it? And it really worked. Like, that same thing that I was insecure about with the record, by leaning into that and being able to kind of successfully articulate not just, oh, here's a new album, here's what it sound like, here's what my, you know, the things that artists are concerned about. Like, oh man, I got all this live instrumentation right here, and it's like this fusion of funk, of Dayton funk with futuristic hip hop, hybrid electro, whatever bullshit. Like, nobody but us music nerds care about that. Being able to articulate a story that the average person, that the editor of a newspaper or a website, fans, people on the other side of the looking glass, being able to articulate a story that they care about, that was the goal. And, you know, human life was what I had to roll with. So, you know, articulating my perspective on life, my perspective with the record, as well as the things that really shaped it, that I felt were connective to other people. That's what I roll with. And it really worked. Like, I got some of my best press for that record, some of the best reviews. I don't even know if the reviews would have been as strong. I mean, reviews in 2020 aren't necessarily, you know, the bee's knees, but they're, you know, they still make you feel good as an artist, and they do help keep the life cycle of the record going. So I don't think the record would have been as well received if I wasn't able to articulate mine and the record's story effectively in the rollout. So that's it, man. That is communicating your story. And I know we got a few folks in here, but if there's any questions or thoughts that y'all want to toss in there, we're gonna get into playing some music here, but I can swing back around and answer some questions. So let's see what we got. I have a few different options here. I think I'm gonna start with a beat. I'm gonna do a little bit of work to this beat still, but this is originally commissioned from my guy B Shields, Brandon Lee. Yeah, it's something I've been enjoying. So this is called, my version of this beat, my track is called Cyan. Not sure what Brandon will be calling it, but here goes. Let me know if levels all cool. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah. Might put some more breaks in that, but that's what we're looking at right there. Yeah, for sure. We'll have to see what he does with it. So, so hopefully there was some good, some value in that communication or telling a story discussion there or topic. I think I'm gonna expand on it. I mentioned last week that I'm doing this bi-weekly newsletter, which I invite everyone to subscribe to. Newsletters I think are actually my favorite form of communicating, and I honestly get my best results. All praise to the few folks who are here with me today. I do have a ball, but the emails do tend to bring a slightly larger crowd and connection as well. So if you're interested, again, I let you know that I have the subscribe link in my bio. I do it bi-weekly. It's usually not, oh man, hit me up anytime, man. Right out. Yeah. When it comes to this email stuff, I'm learning a lot. But yeah, I was always super spotty with my emails. I may send some when I had records coming out, or when I had like a column or an article I'd written that I thought, I really wanted to get out to people, maybe like a yearly update. But I really just wanted to transition over to trying something a little bit more consistent. And truth be told, post-quarantine, I can't promise I'll be able to keep these up weekly. I'm thinking I'm going to make these a little bit more special events-ish when I really have something of value to put together. So they might not be as consistent. They'll just be kind of one-off events. That's what I'm leaning toward in my head. And that's post all the quarantine stuff. But the newsletter, I can do an email once every 2 weeks. That's manageable. And again, it's fun because I get to kind of craft it. And I tend to do a lot of exclusives on the email as well. So again, link in bio. But I recommend it if you're interested, if you're digging some of this content and want to, hear about some other things as well. It's definitely something I recommend checking out. And so that's email. So before we get into a couple other joints, I do want to say piano, man. I've been on my piano tip, heavy as usual. So a couple things that I actually invested in myself here. The first is this guy here. Wait for it. Can I bring it over? The cord might not let me bring it, but that is my sustain pedal. And it's a beast. So, just like real pianos have sustain pedals, I needed to get one as well. Only $19 from Sweetwater and Alesis, because I have an Alesis keyboard. And that was good it was good business. $19 for a sustain pedal. Not mad at that. So for anybody, again, I don't expect to have a ton of new piano players learning in real time like me, but I appreciate y'all for letting me share where my head's been with piano. So again, as always, thank y'all for the support. When I post up these things I'm learning and all that, you need a maintain pedal. Oh my God. But yeah, thank you guys for the support. Y'all kind of keep me inspired to keep pushing and keep sharing on the days where I kind of hit ruts on practicing and not always feeling like it, just like exercising. Sometimes you just do it because you know you got to do it and you just power through it. So for those days I have with piano, it's inspiring to think like, yeah, I made y'all accountable for me, whether you know it or not. So thank you. That said, the other thing that I invested in is this guy right here. So we're gonna pause this, and it's a plugin. So don't know if you can hear. I'm reaching. There we go. Yeah. So I got and I posted about this if you want the direct link, but I never really had a good electronic piano sound kit or anything I could really sculpt what I was looking for. So Don, I'm a big fan. As y'all know, I'm a huge jazz fan, and I'm a huge fan of 60s, 70s era jazz and fusion and soul and rock. And man, my weakness as a producer and sampling, whatever it might be, my weakness will always be a Rhodes. The Rhodes sound is just something magical. I'll be playing the record of the day is a George Duke record here, which has plenty of it swirling around. Anybody who has heard my album The World Is Ours, the first or the second track, Since Illuminati, it's not to sample snitch on myself, but it's got like 1,000 streams, so I'm not too worried. Lonnie Liston Smith sample. Lonnie Liston Smith is like one of my favorite musicians ever, keyboardists, even vocalists, or producers, arrangers, whatever. But his Rhodes sound is just this beautiful ambient pulsing swirling monster of a thing. So I copped this electric 88 piano, I think it is, from Waves Plugins, and I got to town sculpting exactly what I wanted. And I know it's not the real thing, but man, I could just sit here all day and just play these chords and keys knowing it sounds like a very basic version of some of my favorite jazz records. But all that said, when I make these beats now, I finally can sneak this joint in there, and after these months and months and months of scales and practicing, I can make it sound at least a little decent. So yeah, invested in my craft this week. It's pretty cool. All that said, so let's get into another. We're getting to an unreleased joint, man. Actually, I'll tell you what. Yeah, I'm gonna go old school. I had a few lined up here. This was one of my favorite, man. This record is called Relax Recline. This record was originally, so it features myself, Home Skillet from Cincinnati, aka BJ Digby, and my guy Fatal Pros. We made this many years ago. It's actually on my Bandcamp. It's in my Lucy's album, so it's kind of hard to find. It's not even on the streaming services, but it's a really dope record. And if I remember correctly, my verse on this was actually the predecessor to my Beautiful verse, The Beautiful. So at the end of this verse, you'll hear the first 4 bars of The Beautiful, if I remember correctly, because this was the verse that built up to it. So when you hear this verse, think of it kind of as a prequel to the Beautiful verse. And so, kind of cool. But here we go. Relax, recline.
Sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Space in another place, serious about bass. Face to face with the ace. In and out, no trace. A man without a face. I pace at a quiet grace. Haters show me riot face, hoping that I fall. But I stick tight to love and stay on the ball. Off the wall, nothing to lean on but the all. From low crawl to walk tall with no stall. Just holding on, who can I call? When what I thought was right is rolling wrong. And we rolling on, hoping with these last points we can get it right. Win the fight, late night, past joints. I'm in too deep. And just as I begin to pray, asking if they stay, they fall asleep. Let your kingdom come, let me feel your sun. Keep me warm on this cold concrete. Sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease your mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to
I learned
ease
not
your
to
mind.
watch TV, I burn cable. Shit, all we need is DJ. Time to turn tables, flip numbers and turn the timetables. Until I'm able to burst in perfect right angles. We live in time staples and walk in the presence of God. Look around me, you can find angels. Not to be pimped, I'd rather sign labels. They ain't feeling me fine. Pay me no mind, I curse them out in sign language. Blade running over lightning, writing with a perfect mix of daydream and rhyme schemes. Shakur said he never changed the road, he sparked the mind to do it. And it's my job to pass the blueprint to the next human. Music is the logical progression of the globe. I learned how to enter their spirits through earlobes. Here goes another stimuli to enter my inner eye. Metaphors I write, metapie the travel infinite and live and I die to live. I figured everybody has a right to this. That's why I write you this. I'm spinning the same record. Life's the only thing that you can give and take in the same second. So I tell them, conceived in 81. I was born in 82. Heard I die tomorrow. So I resurrected back to you. There's some shit we gotta do. Hold on before we hold the globe on our shoulders. Let me jot down a bar or two.
Yeah, sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Sit back, relax, recline, meditate, divine. Find some peace, try to ease my mind. Reach beyond speech and time to a beach sublime. Find some peace, try to ease my mind.
Relax and recline, push your problems to the back of your mind. And unwind like a watch unraveling. And travel through time to keep the past from tattling. While shadow box at night when your eyes is battling. So much when the sun shines. Woman, sometimes you gotta let things happen. And let your mug smile while you looking so mean. The problem with being real is you no longer dream. Holding on to old demons instead of letting them go. Like weeping willows, crying over melting snow. As seasons change, you remain blessed to grow. Snatch the air out of fear and leave the F alone. Failure is success unknown. Capture your mind, master your life. Check your emotions, plan out your time. Cause the essence of home is merely interaction with God. Take lessons from your own soul, baby. And relax and recline. And relax and recline.
Man, that was my jam. That's Relax Recline. And yeah, I think that is available on my Bandcamp, ilpoetic.bandcamp.com. Link is in my bio as well on that. But yeah, good times, man. So let's see. Do we want to do record of the day? Let's do record of the day. So, as I mentioned before, record of the day, my guy George Duke. George Duke is a monster, not just for his solo records, but every record he's played on ever. Just one of my favorite keyboardists, producers, musicians, period. This is Feel. It's a pretty well-known record. It's not like rare or obscure, but it's that dude right there, you just already know. Sometimes you ever look at a record, or you look at the back of a record, you know, and you just turn it over, and you see it's like the Herbie Hancock Daylight cover. It's the one with the, for my record heads or my jazz heads. It's the one with the Slum Village Fall in Love sample, but also, or the Get This Money sample. But it's also the record where it's an all red background and it's him with like 30 synthesizers around him, you know. Same thing here. You just see George Duke, this like really overexposed picture, black and white, of him in the studio looking mad serious, just in front of a monstrous synthesizer. Just, you know, sometimes they say don't judge a book by its cover, but with records, you can always, not always, but you can often judge them by their covers. As in, when you see just a dope ass cover, you're like, yo, there's gotta be something here. So we gonna get into Feel. And again, for my World Is Ours head, since I already exposed the sample to my my song Since Illuminati, I figured let's do the same here. So we're gonna get into this. Feel by George Duke. This is the title track. Here goes. And this is our closeout for the day, y'all. Sponsored by Beatbox Records.
Time brings me you.
Thanks to all y'all beautiful people for sticking around.
Stirring my soul. Sleeping
You know.
and whole. Now I can see. Now I
Chill.
can feel. Now I can live. Now I can give.
Let's go. She urban verbalizing. I forgot the lyrics now. But yeah.
Life in me.
And as I've mentioned before, my Beatbox Records Spotify playlist does have this record in here.
See
If you be digging these things that I play, you might want to go follow that playlist because I'm adding to it regularly. It's a thick playlist. Straight albums, not even songs.
life in you. Touch your mind.
Yeah.
We come almost as one in one.
So yeah. Thank y'all once again for kicking it with me today. Today was a very intimate episode. That's what we used to call our shows. When not a lot of people show up, they'd be like, man, how was the show? Like, it's cool, it was just real intimate. But no lie, the intimate shows would end up being some of the dopest shows. So we'd be like, man, why shit on a great show? This is a fun episode. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The intimate shows, man, you could really, literally just reach out and they're right there. They're right at the stage. The energy was just extremely potent. And it was shared, like everyone would discuss it afterward, hang out at the bar, have drinks. It was just a great energy. But that's how this feel. This is like the quarantine live stream edition. It's an intimate crowd, but it's like I can just reach out and touch it. Nah. So yo, don't forget subscribe if you're interested in that newsletter. That's really what I'm pushing. I'm not even trying to sell y'all nothing. I mean, if you want to listen to my music, you can vibe it, you can stream it. I'm there. What up, Jean P in the building? But man, that newsletter, that's where the energy is at. That's where I'm putting all those idiots got resources, new music I'm working on, just everything. I want to talk to the people who want to get talked to, who want to hear it, who want to talk back, communicate. That's what I look forward to. So, but you know, new records out. new songs. Dropped something last month for quarantine. Wrapping up a new instrumental or producer record myself. Currently running the stems through this Neve preamp, courtesy my guy Roy, Rarefied Records or Recordings. Can't wait to have that out to y'all. Shit is crazy. If you like what's happening right now, it's kind of in that vibe actually. That's not no announcement, I'm just talking stuff. We just vibing. You know these records went on for like 8 minutes. So yeah. Shouts out to George Duke, Beatbox Records, which is officially open for safe business in Barrio Logan. Make sure you follow Beatbox_Records. Go get a visit in there, get some records in your life. My name is Poetic. This is Ill Communication, episode 6. Man, we doing versus numbers right now. We doing Teddy and Babyface numbers, Erica and Jill numbers. But it's just me with this mic. I'm just talking. All right, y'all. Have a good one. It's been fun as always. And hopefully see y'all next week. We keep this thing going. And peace and love. All right. Bye. I do have better Wi-Fi than Ellie.